Hello everybody, Rice Bonds, Montana DeYoung here with you. And today I wanted to talk to you about one of my favorite baseball cards in the whole wide world. But let me set it up for you real quick first. So back in 1987, I was 7 years old, and Leaf Company released 3 sets that contained Barry Bonds, which is my favorite player. Their first set was released in the United States under their flagship Donruss. And so this is the true rookie card of Barry Bonds that came out of that set. Now then they decided to release a partial parallel set in Canada with much the same design, but with players that they thought would do well in the Canadian market under the Leaf logo. And then, after that, they decided, for the first and only time in the company's history before the industry had changed, to release an opening day set, a commemorative set, once the baseball season got started, sort of to celebrate the starting lineups of each of the teams in Major League Baseball. And it's in this set that you might be able to find my favorite card. And that card is none other than the 1987 Donruss opening day error card. Now, you might be able to note a couple of differences between these two cards. One is noted there that the player here is wearing a light jersey and the player here is wearing a dark jersey. But the obvious difference is that the picture over here is not Barry Bonds. It's of Johnny Ray. So that was kind of a boo-boo. And apparently they didn't catch the error until about 2% of the total print run had been sort of printed, boxed up, and shipped out. Now, these cards were released during the junk wax era. Reasonable minds may disagree about when that era was, but during this era, we know that there was rampant overproduction of baseball cards. For example, I've read estimates that 1987 Topps had up to 7 million copies of each card printed. And I can't imagine that Donruss would be that far behind. So this is probably one of many millions of copies of this true rookie card here. This card is also a true rookie card. The hobby probably would not consider this card a true rookie card because it wasn't one of the flagship releases. It was a commemorative set. On the other hand, this commemorative set was released with an actual number in the back, 163 out of however many cards were released. And so some might argue that this is actually a true rookie card, because if it were a special set, a parallel set, an insert set, then it would have some other letter designation around it, like maybe OD 163. Since this is just 163, it could be argued that it's a rookie card. Whether it is or not, the interesting thing obviously is the fact that they made a huge error and caused this card to be released to the public in microscopic numbers compared to how cards are generally released during that period of time. Now, have a look at the spreadsheet I opened up in the background there for you. What I did here was I ordered all the cards that were released in the years 1986 and 1987, and I put them all on a list, and then I took a look at their PSA info and researched their overall print run to try to figure out how many of my favorite card exists in the world. And I came up with a guesstimate of about 200, because that would mean that they printed 10,000 sets. And out of 10,000 sets, 2% of that is the estimate that I've heard. So 2% would contain the error. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know how anyone would necessarily know that unless you spoke to the person who oversaw printing and release and operations and who was there. They would also be able to answer how many total sets were released, which would make it easier for us to calculate how many of the error cards there are in the world. But be that as it may, you can see that 3 of the cards here are right in front of you, right? You have the opening day white jersey and the opening day dark jersey. And then you also have the Leaf card. 3 of the 4 most condition-sensitive cards, if you're going by PSA 9s achieved from submissions, are here. And I don't know exactly why Leaf is so condition-sensitive, but as you can see, the 2 Canadian brands had a time with quality control. Both the O-Pee-Chee and Leaf cards from 1987 are extremely condition-sensitive. Possibly because they were printed on different cardstock using different technology. They were packed out differently, you know, and sent to a different country. But the interesting thing is that 2 of the 4 most condition-sensitive cards going by PSA 9s are from this commemorative box set. And it really should be no surprise, actually, once you have a look at the type of set that these cards came out of. So, I've never actually opened one of these before, but I wanted to do it on camera because I wanted to see what the cards look like right out of a pack. Now, as you can see, they didn't really come in packs. This is the commemorative box set. It has the Donruss trim, and Leaf Incorporated was in Bannockburn, Illinois, apparently, in 1987. So one wonders if that was also the factory at which the regular Donruss was printed, and then if Leaf came out of a different factory. So I've never actually taken a look at the cards that have come right out of this box, and I've always been curious about it because cardstock from the junk wax era is notoriously low quality and is relatively easy to counterfeit. There's not really that many cards from the junk wax era that are even worth counterfeiting. One would be the Barry Bonds, and I've always wondered whether people like myself have been paying exorbitant prices for a Barry Bonds era card that may or may not be counterfeit. And we know now that the grading companies PSA, BGS, and SGC are way less vigilant and careful about detecting counterfeits and trimmed cards than we ever thought possible. So nowadays, when I see a Bonds error card online available for sale, I always just wonder what has possibly been done to the card, or whether the card is actually even genuine, since I've never held a raw card in my hand. As I stated before, if you've ever held a 1987 Topps card, a base card, and a 1987 O-Pee-Chee, you can see that the cardstock is basically half as thin with O-Pee-Chee. And if you've held the cards raw, you could probably get a feel for which ones are counterfeit and which ones aren't. Now, I've had people wonder why cards from the opening day set have gotten 10s when the corners aren't nearly as sharp as you would expect a 10 to be. Let's take a look at the corners here. So they're kind of rounded, as you can see. They're just not razor sharp as you would expect to see from a 10. I mean, that's pretty rounded over there. And the reason I've understood that these types of cards get 10s is because they're judged against their peers. Now, I know that there's supposed to be an objective quality to it, but I think subjective standards do come into play sometimes when you're talking about how a set looks. If you look at the Leaf, for example, look how razor sharp those corners are. And this only got a 9, probably because of centering, but you can't really compare that level of sharpness to what you typically see from this set here. It's just not as crisp. And now that we're looking at the actual set, you can see why that's the case, right? Because here, let's open this up. Now, I'm super paranoid and was wondering if the shrink wrap was real, but I've watched some videos and I've done my research, and it turns out that these cards are all in the same order. They're collated the same. So I actually know where the Barry Bonds card is going to be, and I believe I know where the error card would be as well. So I took off the shrink wrap there, and then there's this soft plastic cover. And then as you can see here, these cards have been sitting in this tray for 30 some odd years, and there's nothing sharp about those corners, right? So as these cards rattle around in here over the years, you can see why they'd be rounded in some cases, especially the ones at the very end of the deck, right? If you have cards from conventional wax packs that are traditionally known to be right at the edge, or, you know, right at the front or right at the back, oftentimes those are the cards that are the most condition sensitive. So Don Mattingly, one would think, from this set is going to be one of the most condition sensitive from this particular set. And so is the Glenn Earl Davis, since it's in the back. But this type of cellophane sort of shrink wrap exerts pressure on all the cards. So you have the unfortunate situation of being shrink wrapped, and then the further unfortunate circumstance that the little well that they're placed in is not a perfectly sharp corner. So my understanding is that the Barry Bonds proper card and error card is going to be found in the third brick here, the Dale Murphy brick. And if you see back here, that is right. There you see that Barry Bonds is there. Now the Johnny Ray regular issue is also going to be in this brick near the end. And there has been some discussion online as to whether the error card that I love so much is really even an error card, or really even a Barry Bonds card. It's clearly an error card. I've heard some people who broke this product by the case in 1987 because they were dealers say that they weren't sure if the error card was in place of the proper Barry Bonds card or in place of the proper Johnny Ray card. That is to say that if you have this proper card here, and then you also find the Bonds error card right around there, then it would actually be a Johnny Ray card, which has the wrong name in the front and stats in the back. I find that really hard to believe. I could see them making a mistake where they got the name wrong, that where they had a Johnny Ray card and they put the wrong name up front. But I can't imagine a circumstance where they would have an alternate picture of Johnny Ray, the wrong name and the wrong back, and have it be an error of Johnny Ray rather than Barry Bonds. So I actually don't know the answer. I've never seen the error card pulled on camera. I don't think anyone has. I've looked, it doesn't exist. So they say there's a 2% chance that the error card lies right in this brick here. Now, I'm thinking the chances of me pulling my favorite card of all time is very, very unlikely. Probably a lot less than 2%. Who knows what the distribution of those sets that actually contain the error look like. In the case of another famous error card from the junk wax era, the 1990 Topps No Name on Front of Frank Thomas, it was pretty well known that the factories, there were multiple factories printing that card, and it was the ones coming out of the East Coast that contained the error, which actually turned out not to be even an error, but that's a discussion for another day. So I'd be curious to find out if the error card, which is this card, is going to be right here like this, 1987, or if the error card is going to be in the place of the Johnny Ray. But you can see here that this is the proper issue, And I just think that there's almost no chance, given the fact that the backs of these two cards are identical and the front is also identical, but for the picture, that it would be a Johnny Ray error and not a Barry Bonds error. Either way, it's an interesting card that is going to be sought after for a long time. So let us have a look. Now, if you look at the back here, you can see that the centering is already not going to be ideal. Not terrible. It looks like left to right, it's going to be, you know, okay, like this is the top. So when we're looking at it, this is going to be the left edge. This is going to be the right edge. So the left edge, I predict, is going to be a little bit wider. And looks like the top is going to be a little bit wider than the bottom. Let's see if we're right. Now, remember, these were all collated the same. So they are all in the same order. That's how I knew that the Barry Bonds card was going to be at the very bottom. You can see why now that Dale Murphy, Wally Joyner, Jose Canseco, Don Mattingly, and whoever are on the back sides of these bricks are going to be the most condition-sensitive cards of all the cards in the deck. Now I want to be careful here. I know that the Johnny Ray is right around there, so I don't want to damage the edges of these cards inadvertently. But if I am going to accidentally dig my nail into it, I don't want to dig in where the Johnny Ray card would be in the event that this sort of conspiracy theory is right, that the famous Bonds error is actually really a Johnny Ray error. So let's have a look here. This is what these look like. I wanted to break them on camera so that people wouldn't buy counterfeits. Now I know what the cellophane feels like. Be really careful here to take out these cards as gently as possible. Okay. All right. So, how does the corner look there? Let's see. Yeah, it's a little round, as to be expected. It's kind of amazing when you look back at the non-error card that I have here in a PSA 10. These are pretty sharp corners for a card that would be existing at the back of a brick for 30 some odd years. Okay, let's see here. What kind of condition are these cards in? What does the gloss look like? I really want to be able to detect in the future what maybe a counterfeit would look like. How does the cardboard feel? I'm going to be taking a couple of examples of cards from this set and scanning them under great magnification to see what the edges look like on these cards that are packed fresh, because I want to know if they've been messed with. And blades in 1987, I hope, would have a different sort of cut pattern upon a closer look than cards that have since been sliced up by a lot of the famous and non-famous scam artists out there. You can see that these cards are condition sensitive. The Dale Murphy is pretty chewed up. The Chili Davis is pretty off center, and there's this little residue on the card. Some of it is residue and other of it is residue that's sort of now stuck onto the card but can come off if you rub it off. Now I have a PSA 10 of the Bonds error card, and it actually has one of these little white things on there, and I always thought it was a scratch, but maybe it's just debris from 30 years of being entombed in cellophane that have caused little bits of dust and pieces of paper to be sort of smushed onto the surface of the card. So this is likely to be an actual unopened set, because these cards are in the order that you expect them to be in. There's the Kirby Puckett. That looks pretty good. In terms of centering, you know, it's a little bit heavier on the top, a little bit heavier on the right, but not too bad. Pretty glossy overall. If you can see what the card sort of surface looks like, paper is going to be dimpled, right? So that is what the dimpling looks like for anybody who wants to examine their own cards under a loop. So let's see here. Mookie, Candiotti, Dunston, Hendrick, Evans, Shelby, Mosby. Here we go. This is the Johnny Ray. And this is the one spot I would have expected to find the error card had that theory been correct. It's unlikely to be correct. So the only other place to find the error would be the last card in the little deck that I'm holding here. But you can see what the Johnny Ray was meant to look like. That's why it's really hard to believe that it would be a Johnny Ray error rather than the Bonds error that everybody thought it was all these years. Okay. Joey Cora. Shout out to Matthew. Let's see here. Tony Phillips, Robbie Thompson, Harold Reynolds. My goodness. Sachs, Lou Whitaker. Let's see here. All right, so we're getting down to the last card. Let's see if it's the error card. Well, it says Barry Bonds. That's a good sign. Oh, and we already see the white jersey. So, there you have it. This is the non-error card. There's a little bit of dust on the surface that I'm going to try to remove later. The card itself looks like it's in decent shape. Pretty darn good, I'd say, given the fact that it's been sitting at the back of that brick for as long as it has. Now, my friend Greg has asked me how a card that is this sort of dinged up along the edges able to achieve a 9 or a 10. And as you can see, these 1987 Donruss are really dark bordered, so they're super condition sensitive. You can see the rough edges of even the best examples. And I will say that this is actually one of the better examples I've seen. It's raw. It's a little bit of a tilt, as you can see. It's tilted a little bit to the left. But in terms of the centering, this is not terrible. This would probably get a 9, I would say. If it wasn't for the tilt, I think it would have a good shot at a 10. I don't really see any snow on the surface here. Those white dots there, I think, can be actually brushed off. They're the pieces of paper that have been sort of compressed onto the surface from decades of pressure. Yeah, but this is a pretty nice card. So now you have it. This is the raw version of the correct version. This is what a PSA 10 looks like. I think that the surface quality of cards are often underrated. This is pack fresh gloss. You can even smell it. It smells different. All right, well, I don't think I'm going to touch the rest of these bricks here because there's not really anything in there that I need. But I hope this has been informative. And if you like what you see, or if you have any questions, leave a comment below, and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching.